A wave of force slammed into the Minneapolis night, the kind that tells a neighborhood the calm is over. Federal agents pushed forward, pepper spray cutting the air, vehicles blocked by an angry crowd that refused to step aside. The flashpoint ignited right at the heart of the Somali community, a community already shaken for days, and tonight the pressure finally detonated. When agents checking identifications met residents who said enough, the street turned into a test of who holds the line and who gets pushed out of it. And if you think this ends here, you are not ready for what is coming next. Keep watching, do not blink, and before the algorithm buries this, subscribe right now and activate every alert. This is not a moment to watch from the sidelines. The clash did not begin with pepper spray. It began with a decision made far from Minneapolis, a post on a holiday night, a quiet announcement from a president who knows exactly how to drop a political bomb. Temporary protected status for the Somali community terminated. No countdown, no transition path, no bridge, just a sentence that ripples into fear, confusion, and a sense of betrayal. For a community that has built homes, businesses, and entire cultural anchors in Minnesota for decades, the message landed like a door slammed in their face. And in neighborhoods where trust with authorities is already fragile, a move like this does not stay on a screen, it spills into the street. That is why when federal vehicles rolled in on that tense Tuesday, checking identifications in the middle of a heavily Somali neighborhood, the crowd moved fast. They did not wait to see intentions. They stepped in front of the vehicles and said with their bodies that this block was not going to become a corridor of fear. The refusal triggered confrontation. Pepper spray arced. People backed away, coughing, shouting, recording. And standing amid the chaos was City Council member Jamal Osman, watching federal officers push into the place he represents, the place he grew up in, the place where fear is becoming an unwelcome visitor that refuses to leave. The cameras captured a government presence that felt less like routine enforcement and more like escalation. Minneapolis knows tension, but this was different. This was a community already bracing for what comes after the end of protections, suddenly facing officers demanding documents while emotions were already ready to burst. The smell of pepper spray hung over a question many residents have been whispering for days. What exactly is the plan? Because when protections vanish and identification checks intensify in the very neighborhoods most affected, people do not see coincidence, they see a message. And the message hits even harder in Minnesota, home to the largest Somali community in the United States. These neighborhoods are not footnotes, they are hubs of identity, resilience, and intergenerational survival. Here, people arrived fleeing conflict, built new lives, and raised children who speak with both Minnesota calm and East African rhythm. Taking away legal stability from these families is not just a bureaucratic shift, it is a shockwave into households, schools, workplaces, mosques, and community centers. And when a community is on edge, every knock on a door, every unfamiliar vehicle on the block, every officer near an intersection feels amplified. The Tuesday confrontation was not an isolated spark, it was a thermometer reading, a sign of how close things are to overheating. Federal agents insisted they were conducting standard operations, but standard operations do not normally require pepper spray to clear a path through residents who feel cornered. And when officers choose to push through instead of step back, the trust that was already thin becomes almost transparent. Listen carefully to the tone in the videos recorded that night. You hear coughing, anger, fear, confusion, and a question repeated over and over. Why here? People are not asking about geography. They are asking about intention. Why target the most anxious community at the exact moment of their highest vulnerability? Why now? Why like this? Minnesota is no stranger to national attention, but the Somali community has long operated in a double frame, celebrated for cultural strength and entrepreneurship, yet politically targeted whenever national debates shift towards immigration. And with every shift, the same cycle repeats. Fear rises, rumor spreads, and uncertainty becomes background noise. Terminating protections throws gasoline on all of it. Suddenly, parents wonder if their permits will evaporate. Students wonder if their futures are stable, Elders fear paperwork they do not fully understand. And when the government moves without clear communication, communities fill the silence with anxiety. That anxiety reached a breaking point when federal officers showed up with identification checks. People who felt the rug had already been pulled from under them decided that the street was one place they would not step aside. In that moment, the neighborhood acted as a single organism, protective, reactive, tense. And when bodies formed a barrier, officers responded with force. Not lethal, not extreme, but force enough to send a clear signal. The government was willing to push through. The deeper issue hiding beneath the pepper spray cloud is trust. Without it, every action feels like provocation. Without it, enforcement looks like intimidation. Without it, residents interpret operations not as law, but as targeting. And when a president with a long public record of inflammatory rhetoric towards certain communities ends a protection program on a holiday night, people do not assume good faith. They prepare for impact. The Minneapolis confrontation is a preview of a national storm. If protections end for thousands of Somali residents, identification checks will not be the last tension point. The fear is not only about status, it is about being singled out, surveilled, pressured, and pushed into corners. Many Somali Americans already feel that their existence is analyzed through suspicion, and when policy decisions amplify that suspicion, confrontations become inevitable. The Tuesday clash also exposed something crucial. People are done staying silent. The crowd blocking federal vehicles was not random, it was coordinated instinct, a universal reaction to pressure reaching its breaking limit. You cannot squeeze a community indefinitely without expecting it to push back, and on that block in Minneapolis, pushback arrived fast and loud. Consider what this means for the national landscape. When vulnerable communities feel stripped of safety nets, enforcement stops being just policy. It becomes symbolic. The pepper spray on that street was not only about clearing a path, it became the physical expression of a larger message. The government is ready to enforce, even if the community is emotionally overwhelmed. And that symbol travels. It spreads into group chats, community meetings, prayer gatherings, workplaces, and living rooms. People start adjusting behavior. They avoid certain intersections. They carry documents everywhere. They warn each other when federal vehicles appear. This is how societal tension builds, grain by grain, until a neighborhood walks through each day with their shoulders raised. Yet another layer sits beneath it, generational strain. Younger Somali Americans, citizens by birth, watch their parents, grandparents, and neighbors be treated like a perpetual question mark. They watch the place they call home treat the people they love as temporary guests, and resentment grows. Not anti-American resentment, but resentment towards institutions that seem to forget the human consequences of cold administrative shifts.
That is why this moment matters. It is not about one night or one crowd or one enforcement action. It is about a widening gap between government decisions and community survival. And unless that gap closes, these confrontations will not stop. They will multiply. Look at the neighborhood after the street finally cleared. People wiping their eyes, parents holding kids close, residents arguing about what they witnessed, fear mixing with exhaustion. This is not sustainable. A community cannot carry this constant tension without long-term damage. When identity becomes something that can be challenged at any intersection, people adapt in ways that fracture trust in the broader society. The federal government insists the termination of protections is part of a broader policy shift. But policy shifts without relief pathways create human fallout. Thousands of people who built their lives under the assumption of stability now face the possibility of uncertainty knocking at their door. And when enforcement shows up aggressively during that uncertainty, the message is not subtle. The Minneapolis confrontation should be a wake-up call. Not only for policymakers, for anyone who believes that pressure applied to the most vulnerable will remain contained. It will not. Communities respond. They always have. They always will. This is where the viewer comes in. This moment demands attention, not distance. What erupted on that street is part of a national climate where vulnerable groups are told to stay calm while their legal ground disappears beneath them. And here's the truth. Calm is not a reasonable expectation when rights feel temporary. If this country wants stability, it cannot keep communities in permanent limbo. It cannot demand trust while delivering uncertainty. It cannot expect compliance in neighborhoods where fear grows faster than clarity. What happened in Minneapolis is not the ending. It is the beginning of a new chapter of tension across the country unless something changes, and communities cannot be left to carry that burden alone. So here's the message that needs to echo beyond this video. No neighborhood should be forced to choose between dignity and silence. No community should be pushed into fear by policy decisions made far away. And no resident should breathe pepper spray because a system prefers force over dialogue. If you believe that what happened on that block should not become the new normal, stay alert, stay informed, and do not look away. And before leaving, subscribe now, because the next wave of pressure is already forming, and this channel will be here to break it down with the urgency it deserves.